Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video. And in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about what we are actually arguing about with people when we are arguing. Okay. And this comes from a question I have from inside the Personal Development School about like why do I keep falling into these patterns essentially with my partner. We've been in this 5-year relationship. We keep running into the same arguments, challenges. It seems like we're arguing over sort of nitpicky things. That was essentially the summary of the question. And the person went on to say as well, in that question, is it possible that like living in close quarters because of quarantine and some of the COVID stuff is affecting my relationship and is making us fight from that perspective? So I'm going to give you a bit of insight today into what you're actually fighting about, and it's not the surface things that you think that you're arguing about. So before I dive into all of that, just a quick note as well. We have a 25% off coupon that I will link in the description box below for access to anything inside of the school. So the 3, 6, 12-month memberships, as well as the single course purchases. And then also, if anybody's struggling right now during this time, we are offering scholarships. So you can reach out to my team at info@personaldevelopmentschool.com as well for different scholarship options we have available. So here's one of the biggest things I've seen, and I'm going to tell you a story that I used to tell all the time when I was doing these live workshops all the time in the past. And the story comes from clients, two of the clients that I saw for quite some period, and we'll call these clients Amy and Brad. And these two individuals essentially came into my office. They'd been married for about 10 years and they were really struggling in the relationship. And you could tell by sort of the nature of how they were communicating that Amy was holding on to a lot of anger, like really feeling angry and resentful. And you can tell Brad felt kind of like discouraged by the whole relationship. So they came in, they're having a conversation. I think this was like maybe their second session. And they were talking about how they got into an argument about the clothes being on the floor. And they were going, we always fight about these silly little things like the clothes on the floor. So it really, the reason I bring this up is because it really touches on our members' question. And she's going, it's going to be the demise of our relationship, these clothes on the floor. And you could tell as she was talking about the clothes being left on the floor that she was like so angry, like 10 out of 10. And one thing we want to know and remember as individuals, as human beings, is that whenever we're feeling disproportionately reactive to something, that from a conscious perspective, we'd be like, well, clothes on the floor at the end of the day, like shouldn't really trigger somebody more than like 1 or 2 out of 10. It's just clothes on the floor. When we have this disproportionate reaction, it's because that surface thing we're arguing about or discussing is creating this really intense um, charge within us because it's not about the surface thing. It's about what meaning it activates. It's pre-existing within us. And when we have a trigger, you can think of like a trigger almost always having to be a pre-existing event. It's something already stored within us that's being touched, and all the stored emotion from all the previous events that remind us of what we're experiencing in the moment are now flooding to the surface. And that's essentially what triggering is to a certain degree. So she's sitting there talking about the clothes on the floor. She's getting so angry, like so frustrated. And you can see as she's getting mad like this, you can see the husband just starting to withdraw, like just like shrinking, feeling sad, like almost like a hopelessness. And just kind of like retracting, and his whole body language shifts. And as we're having this conversation, I ask her, okay, so what meaning do you give to the clothes being on the floor? And she goes, well, he doesn't respect me. And growing up with my father, I felt like he never respected me. And I felt like everybody on my father's side of the family was disrespectful towards women. And she goes on and on and on. And she's got all of this like disrespect wounding her whole life. And as I was learning about her from the previous session, the first session, I was also recognizing that she had a lot of like subconscious habits essentially, which was what happens when we have imprinting from other experiences, where she was in a state of disrespect in the relationship to herself, like not standing up for her own boundaries on a regular basis. So by the time she did, she'd get so mad, but there was inherent like disrespect that she was having in the relationship to herself as well, like not speaking up a lot of the time, doing things she didn't want to do, working in a career that she didn't like, but just feeling like she has to sort of appease her parents. And this is like this lady's, in her 40s. It's not like she just, is a teenager in her early adolescence. And so she has all this like programming, which is being in disrespect in the relationship to herself. So you can only imagine she's got like a core wound there. She's got a shadow side, and often core wounds and our shadow go a little bit hand in hand. And she's projecting this onto the experience of the laundry being on the floor. It's activating all these things within her. And she goes, I always tell him, da da da. And he turns around when he gets a chance to explain, and he goes, well, she gets so mad at me. And then I feel like I can't talk to her. And like, I feel like I do a lot with the kids. I feel like I'm always like looking out for them, taking care of them, taking them out on weekends. I'm working a ton, and I'm putting a ton of effort into like the family. And I feel like she doesn't see that. And I go to him, okay, so what meaning do you give when she's getting this mad about the clothes being on the floor? And he goes, well, I guess I make it mean she doesn't love me because I'm trying so hard in all these ways. And I feel like she like wants to be mad at me and push me away. And I guess I feel unloved. And so here we have two people who are discussing the clothes being left on the floor. But what they're really fighting about is being disrespected and unloved, which is much, much deeper. And when we looked into sort of his history a little bit, we found that he had really big wounds of not feeling loved from his mom and feeling emotionally neglected and not feeling like seen and understood. And he was feeling some of being unseen and misunderstood in his relationship to his wife. And so there's this whole dynamic at play. And so the reason I wanted to say we're not fighting about the things we think we're fighting about, it's usually not the dishes. It's that, you're feeling unsupported, or it's usually not the clothes on the floor, it's disrespected, or it's usually not, the not receiving the call back in time or the text message. It's about feeling afraid of abandonment. Or so what we have to get into the habit of asking ourselves, because the same idea of like if we can't measure something, it's hard to solve something. If we can't specify or determine something, we can't solve something. So we have to be able to get into the habit of being like, what is the underlying meaning I give to situations? And how can I really get clear on that and define that effectively? So then I can do that work. And then what the work becomes is reprogramming on the core wounds. If we know it's core wound related, or there's this narrative or story we're always telling ourselves, it doesn't even have to be a core wound. It can just be like a painful belief in general. Um, and then we have to, so we do the reprogramming work. Then we also have to check if we have a shadow side. I have a really detailed, amazing course that like we get so much positive feedback about inside of the school. It's a shadow work course. It's called Overcoming Unworthiness by Understanding and Accepting Your Shadow. It's basically like the repressed qualities, and it touches on the ways you behave in your relationships that you're not recognizing, or behave most importantly in the relationship to yourself. And so we have to look at that. Like, what is our shadow piece? Are we disrespecting ourselves when we feel disrespected by others? Is that like a two-way thing? And then the third thing is we have to communicate about that effectively. Most of the time people don't hear us when we get mad and critical. They just become defensive and shut down. So we have to learn effective communication strategies to say, hey, like, every time I see the clothes on the floor, I feel like you don't respect me as a person, and it's really challenging for me. Or even more gently, if it's somebody difficult to communicate with, hey, each time I see the clothes on the floor, from my perspective, I interpret that as you not disrespecting, or sorry, I interpret that as me being disrespected in the relationship and me not mattering, and things like that. And it's painful for me. And how can we work on this together? What are some strategies we can come up with? And we want to make a collaborative effort to communicate what our internal meaning is, why we're getting triggered, so people have greater context for like how to understand this. And then we want to come up collaboratively with strategies. And hey, what do you want me to work on? It can be a two-way thing. So hopefully this makes a lot of sense. I think that it's a very important topic. And let me know if you have questions. Let me know any questions you have in the comments, and I will make some videos about them. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.